want to join with the leader and my colleagues in thanking and recognizing Laura Dove, who is leaving us in the Senate here at the end of the week. I don't think there's anybody who is more identified with the United States Senate by senators or their staffs than Laura. And when the leader was arriving here as a freshman senator, I was arriving here as a young 24-year-old staffer, and happened, I think, to overlap as well when Laura was a page here. So she's been here, this has been her life, and many of us have had the opportunity through the years to observe her in action and to realize just how not only talented she is and gifted she is, but what a person of incredible integrity and character as well. She spent more than 2 decades serving in the Senate, and 3 weeks serving as my seatmate during the impeachment trial, which I'm hoping wasn't the last straw in convincing her to retire. For the last 7 years, she's been the Secretary of the Minority and then the Majority, a role that involves managing the Republican cloakroom, helping develop the floor schedule, keeping members informed about votes, and providing members with legislative and parliamentary counsel. Laura's done all that and more over the past 7 years, and done it with distinction. All of us on this side of the aisle rely on her counsel, and there's no way we'd be able to have accomplished all that we've accomplished in the past few years without her wisdom and expertise. She has the rare ability to tell senators no, always with a smile, and actually have them listen. I've sought Laura's advice many times, especially since becoming whip last year, and I will greatly miss her counsel, although I'm hopeful that she will be leaving a forwarding address for future questions. As the leader pointed out, Mr. President, you might say that Laura was raised on the Senate. Her father, Robert Bob Dove, twice served as the Senate parliamentarian and had a Senate career that spanned nearly 40 years. So Laura grew up steeped in Senate procedure and tradition. But her own career began as a Senate page, and I think perhaps her proudest accomplishment in the Senate has been mentoring literally the scores of pages who have passed through the Republican cloakroom on her watch. And I know she has made their experience a richer and more meaningful one. And so, Laura, we thank you for your tireless work, the long days and the nights that you've put in. Your wisdom, patience, and unfailing good humor will be sorely missed by senators and staff of both parties. We wish you all the very best in your future endeavors and hope that your next job will involve fewer late nights and more time for leisure, including loading up the RV and making another trip to the Black Hills of South Dakota. Mr. President, most of us think that today's internet is pretty fast. We receive traffic updates basically in real time, get emails within a second or two, and stream our favorite shows whenever and wherever we want. But as advanced as today's internet is, the next generation of internet, 5G, will make 4G look like dial-up. For instance, 5G mobile broadband technology will deliver speeds that are up to 100 times faster than what today's technology can deliver. It will be vastly more responsive than 4G technology, and it will be able to connect 100 times the number of devices that can be connected with 4G. And while that will make it even easier to do the things that we do today, like check our email or stream our favorite shows, the biggest benefits of 5G lie in the other technologies it will enable: precision agriculture, medical and surgical innovation, safer vehicles, and much more. The technology for 5G is already here, but there's more work to be done to get to nationwide 5G deployment. And a key part of getting to that point is developing the workforce that will be required to install and maintain the 5G network. Current internet technology relies on cell phone towers, but 5G technology will require not just traditional cell phone towers, but small antennas called small cells that can often be attached to existing infrastructure like utility poles or buildings. Wireless providers will need to install roughly 800,000 small cells around the nation to support a nationwide 5G network. And of course, after installation, every one of those small cells will have to be monitored and maintained. That will require a substantial increase in the telecommunications workforce. It's estimated that deploying the necessary infrastructure for 5G will create approximately 50,000 new construction jobs each year over the build-out period. And that's just for construction. Right now, there simply aren't enough workers with the necessary training to meet the needs of nationwide 5G. Industry and community colleges have both stepped forward to provide training opportunities, but more work needs to be done if the United States wants to step forward into the 5G future. As past chairman of the Commerce Committee and current chairman of the Commerce Committee Subcommittee on Communications Technology, Innovation, and the Internet, 5G has long been a priority of mine. I've spent a lot of time focused on advancing 5G deployment, especially to rural states like my home state of South Dakota. I was very proud to be in Sioux Falls a few months ago when the city unveiled one of the first 5G networks in the country. In 2018, the President signed into law legislation that I developed to increase access to critical spectrum. And I've also introduced legislation to facilitate small cell deployment, especially in rural areas. Today, I'm introducing legislation to address the other part of the 5G equation, creating a large enough workforce to deploy and maintain all those small cells. As I said, industry and community colleges have both stepped forward to provide programs to train workers. Places like Vicor Teleconstruction and Southeast Tech in Sioux Falls, South Dakota are already helping to train the 5G workforce of the future. But more work needs to be done. My Telecommunications Skilled Workforce Act would help increase the number of workers enrolled in 5G training programs and identify ways to grow the telecommunications workforce to meet the demands of 5G. My bill would require the Department of Labor to bring together our federal partners as well as individuals on the ground deploying next-generation telecommunications services. The resulting working group would be required to identify any current laws or regulations that are making it difficult for educational institutions and businesses to establish programs to help meet the workforce needs of the telecom industry. Madam President, it would also be required to identify existing federal programs that could be used to help address workforce shortages, as well as ways the federal government could encourage or incentivize growth in the telecommunications workforce, including the deployment of fixed broadband in our rural areas. My bill will also direct the Department of Labor and the Federal Communications Commission to issue guidance for states to help them leverage existing federal resources for growing their telecommunications workforces and to help them improve recruitment for industry-led telecommunications development programs like the Wireless Infrastructure Association's Telecommunications Industry Registered Apprenticeship Program. I appreciate my colleagues, Senators Tester, Moran, and Peters, for partnering with me on this bill. Madam President, getting to 5G in the near future is important for our whole country, both economically and for the advances it will bring in fields like medicine and auto safety, which is why it's been a major priority of mine over the past few years. And I am particularly motivated by the benefits that 5G could bring to my home state of South Dakota. The ability to deploy precision agriculture on a wide scale would have huge benefits for South Dakota farmers, and better access to telemedicine could bring better health care to thousands of residents in my home state and other rural areas. But to get to these benefits, we have to ensure that telecommunications companies are able to find the workers that they need. Madam President, I hope that we can quickly advance this legislation so that the United States can continue her march into the 5G future. Madam President, I yield the floor.